been a good couple of weeks, hasn't it? I'm trying out the tripod. I, I don't know actually how to set it up. So it's still on a wonk, but one of the things it's not doing is making my eyes go that way to look at the phone while I'm moving it around. So I'll adjust myself. I could stand up. So just thought I'd check in on everyone. Like again, it's been I don't know for everybody else, but it's been a long couple of weeks. Lots happening, lots of changes. Some good news is that people are getting to see loved ones again, albeit with the social distancing and in bubbles. I have this fantastic idea very early on, and it seems like nobody's done it, and maybe I should think about it. The Zorbs. Maybe we should all. I said bubbles at the beginning. That we could protect ourselves with the Zorbs. Don't know what everybody else's thoughts are. If you want to help, set it up, patent it. Could take off, particularly with the pubs opening and restaurants opening. We just all roll in our Zorbs and maybe have a little hole where we can have a straw to get the drinks. I don't know. You guys tell me what you think. Maybe we'll get some made. Maybe we'll patent them. Who knows? Always see a good out of a negative. That's my ethos. I just was wondering, because it's been very quiet out there, so I'm guessing you're all as busy as I am. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are in respect of what we've been dealing with, what we're moving on to, where we're heading, how we're heading there, and what that could look like, and what could we start to consider and offer as a motivational boost to keep morale going, to keep everyone feeling okay. I don't know about anybody else, but I've noticed that as time's gone on and everyone's quite tired and anxious and worried about what next, what happens next with COVID. Let's mention COVID because it's been a big part of everyone's lives. What impact has that had personally, professionally, and otherwise? There's going to be so many people affected and struggling with the grief of a loved one, potentially, the grief of maybe caring for someone in a professional capacity that you've done as much as you can and not been able to get the outcome everyone would have wanted. The loss of friendships, relationships, these things are all losses. They're all seen as a reason that we can feel a little bit down and feel a bit depleted and be unsure about what we're doing about that. So we're wondering, I spoke to Kim a few weeks ago, and we were wondering how, or if anybody would potentially be interested in how do we deal with loss. So let's think about that. Let's not go straight into the loss of a person who's left this world. Something on training, I've learned to use the word people who have died. We have lost people to death. It's an emotive word, isn't it? So instead of using lots of other words, let's use that, because it can happen. It may not be related to COVID. It may just be very unfortunate that a person has died during this time, and it's not been COVID related and it's been unexpected. and the difference in how everyone's grieving now into to what we used to do because of not being able to have opportunities to do final goodbye sort of funerals, etc. So we've had myself and my husband have had that experience where a friend and his work colleague, it was all very sudden, collapsed, became very unwell immediately, and was on life support for a couple of weeks, literally only a couple of weeks, and sadly died. So there hasn't been a funeral to attend to celebrate that person's life and their achievements and how they used to make people feel, where they were a person who used to make people feel happy, always had a smile on their face, and we weren't sure how we should feel about it, apart from obviously sad that happened. So it did get me thinking, and did get me wondering that also there's been, in some situations during COVID, that people have lost relationships, as in it may not have been working out, that things changed. People who have been on their own all the way through this because they don't have a partner, etc., and they've been isolated from others, a partner, a family member, etc., and how that makes you feel when you suddenly, even if you don't want to see people, there's this saying that you may want to be disconnected, and you may choose to be disconnected from a group, from society, etc., but that's a choice, isn't it? So that's sort of okay. It may not feel okay for others to think that somebody doesn't want to associate or connect with another human being, but there's always a thread, there's always a connection, isn't there, somewhere. So you go shopping, you may just be shopping, but you can see others. You can see the world moving around you, and you might nod to someone, you might say hello to someone, but you might not choose to talk to them. But to lose that choice, to be forced into a situation where you're isolated, and you may not be able to get out, you may not be able to get to a gym, you may not be able to get to the supermarket because you may have been told that you're classed as one of the vulnerable groups and that you can no longer go out and go to the supermarket, etc. Or the person you might have just said hello to every now and then, don't go out, don't walk, you don't go and see that person because that person may not be out at the same time as you. It probably not making a lot of sense, because for a couple of weeks where my brain has been slightly switched off from coming to chat to everyone. But how has that been? That's my question. That in itself, we can be grieving the loss of choice of what we can decide to do, and that can have quite a significant impact. That can have an impact on our well-being much more than we ever really give it credit for. So what's your thoughts, everyone? Would a session talking about loss in all aspects, let's look at it as I always tend to do, and I think is really important, is we look at things in the bigger context, not go, oh, loss is about this is the topic, and loss is about that, and that is the topic. Let's go, what is it that we've felt grieved about? What is it that, and how is it making us feel? And what do we want to do about that? What are some strategies that we could learn what's the grief cycle. So there is a grief cycle, and I'm sure lots of people are aware of it. And if you miss out a process, it can take longer to get on that journey to making some changes and understanding what we've gone through, what traumas we've experienced, what feelings we've had about loss of relationships, friendships, the loss of a family member to death, or a friend to death. So yeah, be interested. What's your thoughts? Am I talking gobbledygook? If I am, feel free to tell me. Does it make sense, what I'm saying? If it does, tell me. Would you like a topic on talking about anxiety around grief, loss, in all of those aspects, in my usual gobbledygook way of explaining? Now things are sort of getting back to normal. How does this group work? Would you like the Facebook group to continue? What do you think we could do moving forward? What's something we could offer? There's a couple of things. So there's talking about loss and grief and understanding the context of that. There's let's also remember not just loss of human life. It could be loss of a loved pet, and that, isn't it? That's a big way of understanding and discussing and having open conversations about how that can make us feel. So looking at it in all of those contexts. Pause for thought and think about what we can look at, what we can talk about. Do we want to talk about things? There's another idea that we could look at as well. Hair. Can you? If I look back on all the videos, I'm like, oh wow, hair. Big decisions in life. Do we now get our hair cut now that the hairdressers are going to be opening? Someone like me who really never liked going to the hairdressers anyway, partially had missed it. But now I feel like I'm at a phase where I can be like, okay, it's going to look scruffy, it's going to look like this. Hey ho, does it matter? I've run this long with it. So that's also looking at, there's something we can do on confidence, on our confidence skills, how we feel about dealing with things, and again, anxiety. So these are little bite-sized sessions we could look at doing. So come on everyone, get messaging. I know you're busy, I know, and I am too, but it's okay. Just be busy, but no, I'm cheating because I've got a day off today. I've tried to get so much done rather than just laze around. So also, for those of you who know, I've set up another Facebook group because I seem to have gone a bit mad about them with the aroma well-being. So I've been busy doing some blending and mixing, which I love doing, and sending out and hoping that it's benefiting people. So I did some of those today. What else did I do today? And I know that sounds like I'm being busy all the time, and I know for some other people that might be, but for me it's downtime, it's doing something different, it's relaxing, and I enjoy it, so that's okay. What's my new skill I learned during this time? Oh, scones. I can make scones. I'm so pleased with myself because the first time I tried them, I thought I'd followed the recipe. They were so dense. They're actual now being used as door stoppers, and they're pretty good door stoppers until the dogs notice it's food and start munching away on them. But even they didn't want them because they were too dense and heavy. Since then, I've mastered it, and they're a bit more fluffy and they rise a bit. So that's something I feel I've achieved, and I'm really pleased about it. So it's a long video because I'm very excited that I haven't had to try and hold my phone, get an achy arm, and chat to you. Okay. What can I leave you with? As you all know, like a quote. So I'm going to read it. Just a second. So, 1,000 fibres connect us with our fellow men. And among those fibres, as sympathetic threads, our actions run as causes. And they come back to us as effects. So for every cause, there's an effect. And at the moment, we're looking at so many different causes that are so important to so many people. So it's good to just think, how do we intertwine with one another? How do we understand each other's differences? How do we start to consider how we function as human beings? 'Cause for the first time that I can ever recall, we've had time to sort of hit that pause button. Even the stop, which is an unusual one, the stop button, the pause button is nice. I like the pause button. It's just pause. Let's think about the whats, the ifs, the maybes. How do we just check in on each other? How are we checking in on each other? Do we feel a pressure to check in on each other because there's a lot of info out there to do that? Is it another chore? Or can we subconsciously check in on one another? Can we just think, oh, I wonder how so-and-so, I wonder what if I checked in on something, what effect does that have on another person? So I guess that's a thing to consider, how we continue to check in on one another without feeling a pressure, without it being an obligation, but just because it's something we think would be important. So with that in mind, waffled long enough. I'll try really hard to put something else together soon, and until then, anyone needs any space to let off steam, to dump some stuff that is getting too heavy to carry around, and I mean that in a safe way, to safely just drop stuff, then feel free, just inbox me, just message me, and if I can be of any help in any way, then yes, do that. And it doesn't mean you are not coping. It just means once it's in your head and it's just mulling around, that's where it tends to stay, like in a washing machine that just hasn't got the auto switch off anymore, and it just spins round, disturbs the sleep, disturbs our thinking, disturbs our thought processes, can give us ideas that there are things that are being said and done that may not be. Once we've spoken it through without needing a response, because sometimes we don't always need a response, we don't always need someone to come and try and fix it, it's actually the opposite of what we might want. Just saying, oh, do you know what, there's a safe area, I can just dump all these thoughts, then just do that. It's not a problem. Just always remember to put at the end, they're just thoughts, don't need you to get back in touch, and yeah, I won't harass you. But that's something as a human being I'd like to put out there. Obviously, if you need someone to talk to, but isn't urgent, then do that. If it feels urgent, just always check out where you can find some support or ask. Okay? That was me putting my serious face on. Thanks for listening, everyone, and take good care. And as always, thank you for being you. Take care. Bye.